when we come and sit in meditation, and we sit here halfway between heaven and earth, take our seat with a certain quality of dignity, and open ourselves, often what happens in the very simple act of coming Monday night and spending 35 minutes, 40 minutes sitting, we sit, and then the things that we haven't included in our consciousness show themselves. The stress in our body. You're sitting there and your shoulders start to hurt, or your jaw or your back. And it's not like you're carrying something, but all the hours of stress and conflict in our life where we have contracted, where our body has taken on that stress in some way, unconsciously, begin to reveal themselves as we sit. And the body says, remember me? Here it is, and the shoulders start to unknot and the pains that we carry reveal themselves. Or maybe we sit and we're really sleepy and tired. It's like the body saying, hey, remember you haven't had much sleep for a long time. Remember me? And sleep is valued in the Buddhist monasteries, in some places anyway. In one temple it's called the poor man's nirvana, right? That we need to rest. And so sitting is a kind of reminder of a kind of intimacy with what's going on within our bodies or our psyches, or maybe we're restless and worried and all kinds of agitation comes because of things that we have to do and we're anxious about. Or the unfinished business of the heart comes. You sit quietly and then the tears arise because there was a loss or a grief and we've been so busy that we haven't had time to really listen to it and honor it and include it and respect it. Or you just see, the craziness of the mind. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? Anne Lamott, who says, my mind is like a bad neighborhood, I try not to go there alone. That's kind of why we come on Monday nights. And it will do anything. It does all these kinds of stories and fears and imaginings and reruns. My heavens, it does reruns. It's the worst of your kind of low-class cable channel that just runs the same old, bad kind of B-grade movies over and over again. But also we carry our sufferings and trauma and the sorrows of the world, all the images and scenes that we see and know from our community and the broader community and the global community. So we sit and somehow we're asked to include our full humanity in this practice of mindfulness and loving kindness. Albert Camus, who writes, we all carry within us our places of exile, our crimes, our ravages. Our task is not to unleash them on the world. It is to face them and transform them in ourselves, and therefore in others. And so we do this. We sit with all of this. And sometimes it's difficult, because you have to face the loss, or the pain, or the fear, or the anger that you have, or the emptiness, the things that keep us busy, the loneliness. So instead of opening the refrigerator, you sit here and face the boredom or the loneliness. James Baldwin writes, I imagine one of the reasons people cling to their hate and ignorance so stubbornly is because they sense that once hate is gone, they will be forced to deal with their own pain. And so in a lot of ways in the world, people project their hatred on other people, some other group, so that they don't have to face themselves. In a certain way, that's a kind of description of what makes suffering, or what makes evil, if you want to use that word in the world, is not acknowledging one's own pain and placing it on someone else. And when we sit in meditation, instead of it being, okay, now I'll have this blissful, happy time, I'll smile and my mind will be quiet, and that can come. It's not like that doesn't come too. But especially when we first sit, there comes the layers of our conditioning that we're not often so aware of. Our grasping and contracting and our judgment of ourselves and our reactions, or our fear. what is called in Buddhist tradition the small sense of self, or the body of fear, that kind of contracted identity. But there is another reality, and that's the invitation of meditation. The Buddhist texts often begin with the words, "O nobly born, O you who are the sons and daughters of the Buddhas, of the awakened ones, remember who you really are." And there's a kind of dignity and presence that's invited and offered as you take your seat halfway between heaven and earth under your tree of enlightenment. And sometimes people think, well, this enlightenment then is going to be, some really wonderful experience that I can write mom about, write home about, or whatever. And sometimes there are incredible visions and mystical openings, and it's beautiful. But sometimes it's simpler than that. This is from Tamara Engel, who is a meditation teacher, a friend, who is also currently in the last weeks of her life with metastatic cancer. And she writes, "In my years of practice, I've spent many hours sitting with aversion to unpleasant body sensations. As I sat with my distended belly, what I saw was that every itch I didn't scratch, or every tickle in my throat I didn't cough, every throb in my forehead from a headache that I didn't rub, but just sat and opened to, every tear that I let myself weep and stayed present for, served me well. I had cultivated a muscle for bearing witness, for being a mirror to the unpleasant body sensations and the feelings of the heart. And the more I continued in this way, the more peaceful I became. There was no separation, that which was pleasant and that which was unpleasant, and my peacefulness itself became seamless." Very simple. Just this deepening capacity to be present for joy and sorrow, for pain and pleasure, for gain and loss, for sweet and sour. Martin Luther King says, "We will meet your suffering with soul force. We cannot obey your unjust laws. We will soon wear you down by our capacity to suffer. And in winning our freedom, we will so appeal to your heart and conscience, we will win yours as well." Right understanding is that there is a freedom of heart that is possible for you, for each one of us as human beings, that no one can touch and no one can take from you. And I like to carry when I teach on retreats, I bring it out periodically here on Monday night, this poster of Vedran Smolovic, who was the cellist of Sarajevo. And in Sarajevo, which was the kind of artistic capital of the Balkans, during the war in former Yugoslavia a few years ago, Sarajevo was for 3 years encircled and bombarded, and no one could get in and out except for UN helicopters. There were snipers and mortar fire, and every afternoon during that siege of Sarajevo, Vedran, who had been a cello player for the Sarajevo National Symphony, would take out his cello and dress himself up, put on his tux, and take a little folding chair, and go out into the main square in the afternoon, in spite of the sniper fires and the mortars. He could easily have been killed. And he would play music so the citizens of Sarajevo would not give up hope. And this is a picture of Vedran playing in the bombed-out National Library of Sarajevo, a special concert. He then went on tour when that war was finished. And he is a kind of visible testimony to that freedom of heart that no one can touch.